Hello again. I've got a lot to give to you in this report, and I want you to come with me because it's very important. What I am going to at least help to give you understanding of, did the Creator God Yahweh exist? Did God exist? You will see some points in this particular report to help you understand whether or not God existed. Because as you know, as far as the scientific world is concerned, God does not exist. There was no creation, there was no flood. So I'm going to try and give you some evidence to support whether there was or not, or whether he exists or not. I'll give you a bit of a rundown in the index of what we've gone through over the last 8 or 9 reports, and then we'll go into some new stuff. So come with me on this report, please. Just one more little note before we get into this. A lot of people have written into me from all over the world, and they've taken my reports to their pastor or priest or rabbi who have poo-hooed it and who have said, throw it away, it's a lot of rubbish. Well, let me tell you, I'm not going to give you anything of my interpretation or my theology, because that doesn't count to you. But what should count to you, and does count to me, is the words from Yahweh God, the Creator himself. And anything that I give to you in any of the reports and this report is supporting the Yahweh theology. So there's not much sense in you taking it back to a pastor, a priest, or a rabbi, because they don't teach this. What I am doing is exposing to you just what they don't teach, and they should teach if they held up the old book as their creed. Look, you've got to remember, a pastor was taught by a pastor who was taught by a pastor. They've had hundreds and hundreds of years of teaching each other the doctrines that they give to you. The rabbis have been taught by a rabbi who's been taught by a rabbi, going back for hundreds and hundreds of years. Do you think that they would give up what they were taught to teach and then lose their job, lose their entitlements, lose their pay packet, lose their free insurance? No. No, they're not game to step out of the box of what they've been teaching for hundreds and hundreds of years on the basis that you come and give them something in the old book and it exposes them as being false teachers. They're not going to like you. They're definitely not going to give you a pat on the back. Now you have on the screen some items that we've covered in previous reports. I'll leave them there for a moment so that you can research them, do your own studies on it, come to your own conclusions. And the notes are there, exactly what we have talked about. Some of it we will be able to talk about again in this report. Now on this index, it's very important for you to realize in item 6, Yahweh God many times warned them that they needed to accept correction. And the words from Yahweh, he said, they speak in my name, but I didn't send them. Take no notice of them. You will also see that in item 7, Yahweh said he will dry up the Euphrates and the Nile rivers, and that Jerusalem will be completely destroyed to rubble without any inhabitants, and Damascus will be destroyed. I think you look in the world today and have a look at the news, you will see most of that is starting to happen right in front of your eyes. Now, a lot of people want you to believe in the scientific realm when they don't believe in God, they don't believe in anything that was created. There's a picture there of the Hodgson twins, Richardson twins, Durant twins, and there are 2 times twins there. And you'll see that one of the twins is white and the other one is dark. And they all came out of the same mum and dad. And it'll tell you also in the old book that all races, all people, yellow, black, or white, all came out of Ham, Shem, and Japheth, the sons of Noah, after the flood. Very intriguing question that you can ask the people who believe in evolution, who don't believe in God, or don't believe in creation, and more so, don't believe that the world was flooded by a terrible big deluge of water all over the earth. Well, now you're looking at coal seams, but you're looking at trees which have been picked up, plonked down, another layer, picked up, plonked down, another layer, picked up and plonked down, and all of the trees are fossilized, but as you can see, they're still perpendicular, they're still standing up, they are not laying down flat. Ask the question, how could that have happened if there was not a biblical flood, a deluge, a flood covering all of the earth? Because you'll see this in all of the countries on the earth. Now you're looking on your screen, just a big black picture, but in the middle, around in the middle of the yellow circle, there's a little white dot. That's the earth. That's the earth, a picture of the earth that was taken from Saturn. And somewhere on that little white dot, you're sitting or you're standing and listening to my words. Now, this is a very awesome, extraordinary understanding of Yahweh and the creation of the universe and our earth. Yahweh says, the Spirit of God has made me, and the breath of the Almighty One gives life. By Yahweh Spirit, the heavens were made, and all of the host. All of the host is referring to the angels, the angelic hosts. It goes on to tell you there, if you've got time to read it all, thus says Yahweh, your Redeemer. Notice that Yahweh is a Redeemer, not Jesus. And Yahweh, the one who formed you from the womb. I am Yahweh, he says, who has made everything, who spread out the heavens by myself. Notice there was no Trinity at creation. Notice there was no theology that Jesus was there when he made the earth and the heavens. Yahweh said, he formed the earth of my own accord. And you can get that in Isaiah 44. Also realize that in day 1, day 2, day 3, of only 6 days of creation, the 7th day he rested. But in the first 3 days, he made the earth, the air that we breathe, the water that we drink, and the plant and the herbage. Now, if he hadn't made the plants and the herbage and the fruit, there would have been nothing for any living thing to eat. So there's no sense in making the living things until he prepared the whole habitat that was necessary for the fish, the birds, the animals. Everything had to be ready for these animals to live. So when you read the book, you will realize that the sun, the moon, and the stars were not made until the 4th day out of the 6 days of creation. So you had nothing to measure a day, a week, a month, seasons, or the year until the sun, moon, and stars were made. Now you're looking at the little white dot. You're sitting in that little white dot somewhere listening to my words. That's how awesome it is when you try to understand the creation that was done by the hands of Yahweh, the Creator God. Now you can also realize that if in day 1, day 2, day 3, for the first 3 days, that there was nothing to measure the days, the weeks, the seasons, and the years, we have no idea whether those periods of time were millions of years long. Nothing to tell us how long it took him to do what he did do, created in the first 3 days of creation. Now on your screen, you have a picture of a neuron. And as I talk to you about the neurons that are in your brain, realize that they had to be in the first man, the second man, the third man, the fourth man, and so on. If they were not put there by the Creator, you would not be standing there or listening to me now. Now, scientists would like you to believe that we evolved. We evolved out of the big blob or the Big Bang. We came up the tree through the tree of apes. That is impossible. And that is a theory that they have given to you. That is a theory based on what they don't know. They have done everything to hide the Creator God from you, from our schools, from our children. Even the churches and the pastors have done everything to try and make you realize that Yahweh God made the first cell or the second cell and it all evolved. That is impossible, because with over 100 billion neurons in your brain, if they were not wired up in the proper manner, you'd be a little bit silly. And if they were not all there, you would not be walking around as a healthy human being. So realize that what you're looking at had to be created by the intelligence of Yahweh, the Creator God. It could never, ever, ever have just evolved or come into being by any accident. Now there's one more very important point. Our brain is between 75 and 85% water, and it can hold more memory than 1 million computers. And you can learn something every day of your life. If you live to be 500 years, your brain would not be full. In fact, you've got to realize that every living thing was made perfect to fit into the ecosystem, and they either come under the category of an omnivore, a carnivore, or a herbivore. And they certainly don't live for 1 million years to go through the process of natural selection. They had to be made perfect, and they only live from 5 to 50 years long. How could you possibly think they went through the process of natural selection? Now, just a quick look at the atoms, molecules, and chemical elements that our body has and what we have to have in our food. The first three, as you can see, you will get out of the water you drink and the air you breathe. The rest of them you will get out of good, wholesome fruit and veggies. Now, down the bottom left-hand corner, the CO2 carbon dioxide. That is essential for photosynthesis, for all plants and trees to live and emit oxygen. Over on the right-hand bottom corner, there you have the atmosphere, or in the old Bible, the firmament, the air we breathe. That's 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen, 1% argon. Now that's been composed by Yahweh God to sustain all life. That would have been impossible for that combination to happen by chance out of any Big Bang. Now, I just want to touch a little bit on what's happening in the world today by the oligarchy, the banking cartel, the New World Order, CIA, the military, and in connection to HAARP, HAARP, which is man-made for weather control. It's also, if you Google it, you'll find that it is their secret weapon. And the chemtrails. You often see a white strip going right across the sky, and they are pouring out, spraying chemicals. Google it, have a look. This is poisoning the atmosphere. Now, as a result of this, bees, they're just about disappeared all over the world. Not a few fish, but thousands of tons of fish, belly up, all over the ocean. Whales, porpoises, belly up, dead, all over the ocean. You can Google it and you can find all these things out for yourself. The farming chemicals made by the drug companies and the pharmaceutical companies, that is poisoning our ecosystem. We have gas CSG mining, with fracking, that is also proven to kill out the marine life because it corrupts the water underneath the ground. All of these things are happening in front of you, but also realize when Yahweh God has deemed that he will destroy all nations of the earth, he doesn't come out of the sky with machine guns and bombs, but he puts it into the minds of the leaders of countries, the military. He puts it into their minds to fulfill what he has planned to see happen in the way of destruction. And this is happening right now. If you just read the story about how he brought them out of Egypt, he put it in the mind of the king of Egypt, the Pharaoh, to chase after the people, and he did just that, just so he could annihilate them all. There's many stories in the old book how Yahweh has caused the destruction of the enemy and military, and in one case 185,000 soldiers were wiped out overnight by the hand of Yahweh. So I want you to look at this. I want you to realize what is going on around you, because it is all going to come to an end. It certainly is going to come to an end by the intervention by the hand of Yahweh. And that is referring to the Daniel prophecy, which is about the mute abomination. And that is no doubt NATO, oligarchy, that is no doubt the New World Order, who's trying to gain control over all of the countries of this earth, using the IMF, using their fake money, and very soon we're going to come into what is referred to in the old book as 4 unions. Well, we already have the EU, then there will be the South African Union, by the way, that is already put together. There will be the North American Union, which will take in Canada and Mexico. And of course, Australia will be in the Asian Union, headed up by China. That is just about to happen in front of your eyes after what is happening in America, when there's a complete and total dollar collapse, and the reserve funds under the US dollar will be completely obliterated. I don't know what will happen then, but there will be a new system of funds and finance come into being. Now, I gave you a report, Gog and Magog War Solved, and I made it quite clear that the Jews today, the Christians today, nobody can zero in on what that is all about. I know there's the World War III, etc., etc. But let me read something to you. Now, this is from Yahweh speaking, and he says in Ezekiel 38:10, "Thus says Yahweh, it shall be on that day that ideas will arise in your mind, and you will conceive a wicked design." Now, it goes on to tell you that all of the nations in this world are called up to a war. Understand that. Now, how would God, Yahweh God, call up all of the nations of the world to a war? Well, I did a bit of research, and as on that report that I gave you about Gog and Magog War Solved, it's NATO. NATO controls roughly 75% of all of the world's military. And all of the nations are under the control of NATO. And I just read to you that he will put it into their mind, evil and wicked ideas into their brain to cause this war. But let me just read another verse here to you. "I will punish him with pestilence and with blood, torrential rain and hailstones, fire and sulphur," that's brimstone, It will rain down upon him and his cohorts and upon the many nations of people that are with him. I will be exalted, I will be sanctified, and I will make myself known before the eyes of many nations of this earth. Then they will know that I am Yahweh. They will be destroyed. It's no different to calling out the king, the Pharaoh of Egypt, to a war only to completely annihilate him. This is all going to be repeated. We're going to see it, I think, in our lifetime. Have a look at that report because it's very important for you to understand. Now, you've been taught that CO2, carbon dioxide, is a greenhouse gas. That's a lie. I've shown you in this report and many reports, carbon dioxide is needed. It is essential in photosynthesis. Without it, the plant life on the trees would die. And if you want to know about how heavy it is, it's heavier than air. It is down low where the plant life is. And how do you know that? Go for a walk up a mountain to 10,000 feet. Not only is there not enough oxygen to breathe, there is no CO2 up there either. How do you know that? Because there's nothing growing up at that height. So understand that the rhetoric, the false message that they're giving to you, that climate change is caused by CO2, that's a lie. And to get what they want, funding from every nation to fund their world government, the New World Order, the NATO mob. They all need funds, and they are convincing every government to sign the treaties and collect for them the carbon tax. That is a terrible lie, and it is going to take over in this world, and I don't know how. Unless Yahweh God intervenes and puts a stop to it, we've got no chance. Now, I've put this up for you. These are news clips from all over the world. Google these news clips. Millions of birds dropping from the sky. Finches and parrots have disappeared. Thousands of tons of fish are dead all over the ocean. Whales and dolphins are belly up dead all over the ocean. The bees have disappeared, and of course, butterflies and frogs have also disappeared. And this is caused by the poison out of chemtrails and the farming chemicals, but it's also caused by HAARP. HAARP is their weather control. If you want to know about climate change, it's man-made climate change by the use of HAARP. Now let's talk a little bit about a couple of the books in the Bible that have been read by billions of people, and they think that they're reading divinely inspired words. I want to talk to you about Ezra, the book of Ezra and Nehemiah. It used to be Ezra 1, Ezra 2. And I want to show you some details which will come up on the screen now to tell you who Ezra was. And then I'm going to ask you some simple questions regarding what Yahweh God said to Jeremiah the prophet, Isaiah the prophet, Ezekiel the prophet, about these people that he had exiled to Babylon. Now before we go into it, let me read to you why the Jews, Judah, Israel, why were they exiled? Why did Yahweh God allow the enemies to come and take them? I'll read something to you from Ezekiel 39, verse 23. Then the nations will know that because of their iniquity, the house of Israel was exiled. Because they betrayed me, I hid my countenance from them, and I delivered them into the hand of all their enemies. They fell by the sword, all of them. I dealt with them in accordance with their contamination and their sins, and I hid my countenance from them. And after I show you this clip, I'll give you the words that Yahweh said to Jeremiah. Now on your screen you've got the story about who Ezra was. It tells you there he was a scribe. He was a priest. He wrote scrolls for the Torah. Now you've been taught that Moses wrote the Torah, and I showed you in a previous report that Maimonides, he also in the 11th century AD wrote the book of Deuteronomy. Tells you here that Ezra was responsible for sealing the canon, which included his own book, Ezra and Nehemiah. He decided which books to include in the Holy Scriptures for both Jewish and Christian Bibles. And this great assembly became the Sanhedrin later on in Jerusalem. And you've got the details there for you to do your own homework on it. All right, now I'm going to put up on the screen as I am talking to you this fella Ezra and Nehemiah, who were not only Torah scholars, but they were Talmud scholars. And Yahweh made it very clear, he said, about those Jews that went into exile, into Babylon. He said, they speak in my name, but I did not send them. They speak the designs out of their own heart. Take no notice of them. They are teaching you falsehood. That's what Yahweh said to both Ezekiel and Jeremiah. And I'll put some of the text up as I'm talking to you about it. Also remember, if all of the Jews that were in Babylon were exiled because of their wickedness, their evil, then how much wisdom was in them? How many of those people who would write stories for you and put it in the Bible that you could place authenticity or credence in it? Because of their writings and their advice to the people, they all went back to Jerusalem, and as you've already seen, 100,000 were killed or driven into slavery. Another 1,000,000 of them were slaughtered. Why? Because Yahweh had withdrawn his protection over them. He had totally rejected them. He made it quite clear. He said to Jeremiah, do not pray to these people. I will not hear your prayers. Now, this is a terrible thing that these people just did not listen to correction. They would not obey Yahweh's words. They were treacherous to Yahweh, and they paid the ultimate sin of being slaughtered. Now this chart you've probably seen before, but it's confirming that Maimonides, a Talmud sage, he says these words. It was only natural that Israelites would believe that sacrifice was a necessary part of the relationship between God and man. In other words, following the practices of pagan idol worship nations around them, Maimonides also wrote the book of Deuteronomy. This is in the 11th century AD. But what a statement. How dare somebody say that God said there should be a relationship and not to take away from them the act of killing blood sacrifices. I mean, the book of Leviticus is full up of a story of how to kill blood sacrifices. And you've just seen from this chart and the previous ones in this report, that would have been concocted up by false teaching. Yahweh did not command for any blood sin sacrifice such as Jesus on the cross. You've got the quotes there. You've got the references there, Amos 5, Jeremiah 7, and so on. Oh, look, it's just terrible that all this is completely happening to a people that would not listen. They would not take any correction. We have a similar problem today with the Christian people who have for hundreds of years been worshipping the Lord, but the Lord could be either Jesus or the Heavenly Father. But that's not acceptable to Yahweh, the Creator God. You cannot look to another deity for the forgiveness of sins and for eternal life. Before I close on this, see the Gog-Magog war sold. It's something that will help you understand. Now I'm going to leave this chart for a few moments for you to look at, but it's explaining to you that these prophets put these reports in the Bible, telling you that Yahweh did not command for any blood sacrifice, and that includes Moses during the 40 years sojourn. He did not command for any blood sin sacrifice. You've got the references on the screen there, so you can see quite easily from Yahweh's own words, he does not, and I mean he does not expect any Son of God, any blood sacrifice of a Christ on the cross. That is not in the words he says. Now I'm going to finish up this report with a little bit from Daniel, because both the Jewish people and the Christian people have been following a standard understanding or interpretation of Daniel going back to the 18th century. And mostly they're all about the same kind of interpretations. I'll just bring your mind to the bottom line first. All of the visions concern the end of days. So the visions of Daniel 2, Daniel 7, Daniel 8, Daniel 9 are not referring to Babylon back in the 600 century, 600 BC, or the Medo-Persian Empire in the 400, or the Grecian in the 300 BC, or the Roman Empire. Every vision is concerning the end of days. Now, let's come up to Daniel 7:25, which is the little horned power, the terrible beast. It tells you he will speak words against the Supreme One. That's Yahweh. And he will exhaust the holy Supreme Ones. That's the ones that are chosen by Yahweh, that are his new Israel. And he will plan to alter the seasons and the law. And I've put there to show you HAARP, HAARP, High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program. That is used with chemtrails. That's the oligarchy secret weapon. They can create, and they are creating, man-made climate change. So that's where they're changing the seasons in that verse. The law, I've put there. The 10 Commandment law has been replaced by the 7 Noahide laws out of the Jewish Talmud. This is already accepted by the US Congress, NATO and the UN, and you can Google that and you'll find that they have already accepted the Noahide laws. Now it makes it quite clear for you that Yahweh does intervene with this mute abomination, with these people. Yahweh intervenes and ultimately destroys this power. You'll pick that up in Daniel 7:11, Daniel 8:25. But there is still 4 world unions to exist in this world, but they do not have their own power. And it'll tell you that in Daniel 8:22. One thing you've got to realize with Daniel prophecies, Yahweh's new chosen group, Israel, inherits Yahweh's everlasting kingdom. That is made clear to you in Daniel 7:22, 26 verses 26-27, and Daniel 2:44. So I've put that up there so you can understand.